Needing to write an employee handbook for your business? This video is the right place for you. We will go through how to write one, what you're needing them, what's the benefits of an employee handbook, and how to present it. So what even is an employee handbook? Quite simply, it's a place to put all your policies and procedures, everything to do with the relationship between employee and company in one place. There's no legal requirement for it, there's no legal definition for it, and many companies are using all sorts of names. So we might have staff manual, for example, operations Bible, something funky that fits your culture. Absolutely perfect. And why do we even bother? Number of reasons. One, if you want to set rules and expectations, people need to know what they are, where to find them, and be really clear about them. Having everything all in one place means that people aren't losing bits of paper and not knowing where to find things. It's there, they know where it is. If you dismiss somebody and end up at the employment tribunal, you'll need to demonstrate that that dismissal was fair. One of those things you'll need to demonstrate is, did the individual even know what the rules were? If you're dismissing for a breach of the rules, the employee needs to know what the rules were in the first place. Having a handbook that's easily accessible, commonly used, is a living, breathing document will help you defend that at an employment tribunal. And hopefully you'll avoid even getting to an employment tribunal if you've got an employee handbook, which really demonstrates your culture, your values, what you expect of people. It lays all these things down really clearly. When people know what's expected, they are far more likely to follow what you want from them. And of course, if you've got culture and you've got values, then people know within the parameters of those expectations, they know how they're meant to do things as well as what they're meant to do. So what should we be including in an employee handbook? Okay, so there's a few minimums. So disciplinary policy, grievance policy, you need to have there. Now, as I said at the start, there's no legal requirement for an employee handbook, so you do need to have these some way, somehow. I would recommend putting them in the employee handbook. In addition to that, there'll be key policies that people need to know and understand because they relate to their everyday. Holiday, for example. How much holiday have I got? How do I book holiday? How much notice do I need to give of holiday? All of those things should be in your employee handbook. Sickness. Who do I ring when I'm off sick? What do I need to do if I'm self-isolating, for example? What do I need to do if I'm ready to come back to work, but the doctor's recommended light duties? What if I'm off for more than 7 days? Do I need to go to my doctor and get a statement of fitness for work? These are the sorts of things that should be in the employee handbook so people know where to go. And we may just need to go to it when we need it. If somebody's not been sick for a long time, they may not know the sickness policy absolutely off the top of their heads. So having things in one place where they know how to get to it when they need it is really useful. In addition, you may have things like IT, devices policies, things around data security, communications. You may have social media policies which set out your expectations on social media, how people can support the marketing of the business but also not say something derogatory about the business. You may have things like vehicles and expenses policies. You may have things like dress codes. These will depend on your business and what you need. For some, a dress code will be highly relevant because it's about the presentation of your brand. For others, far less relevant. So really an employee handbook should be bespoke. It should be about exactly what you need, really setting those expectations that you've got of your people. And then in terms of culture, you may want things like a welcome from the CEO or the founders, something that sets out the values, the mission of the organisation so that people know what they're joining. Bear in mind that you'll probably be issuing this prior to employment starting, but you'll also be issuing updates regularly, probably annually, maybe every couple of years. This should be a living, breathing document. It should be something that people know is relevant and know is worth consulting. There will be some bits of the employee handbook that you need to ensure are legally compliant. For example, your disciplinary and grievance policies must comply with the ACAS Code of Practice on Disciplinary and Grievance. Your holiday must cover the working time regulations. But others, social media for example, will be much more around what do you need as a business? What do you need people to be doing? What do you want people to be doing or not want people to be doing? And my absolute top tip, make your employee handbook non-contractual. The employment contract should cover the key fundamentals, things like hours of work, pay, the things that are contractual, that are fundamental to that relationship. The employee handbook, on the other hand, will cover your expectations, the things that you need in the business. These things may change. Social media is a really good example. I keep using this one, but we've written and rewritten social media policies so many times over the last 10 years as the way businesses use social media and their expectations of employees, and indeed the way that their employees and the public use it, has changed. So those policies have needed to be updated to fit that and reflect it. IT policies, again, as technology has evolved and changed, we've had to update those policies to reflect changing technology. So do make your employee handbook non-contractual. That is my top tip. And finally, how do you present an employee handbook? One thing not to do is stick it on a shelf in the HR manager's office. The employee handbook must be accessible to people. They must be able to read it privately. If they want to raise a grievance, they don't want to have to go in the HR manager's office and ask to get to the employee handbook so they can read the grievance procedure. They must be able to access it privately. It should be living and breathing. It should be something people can access as and when they need it. If people are out on the road and they're not got access to technology, a printed version may well be what they need. And it can be useful to get these professionally printed. It's not that expensive, but it can feel really great to employees to have something that really reflects your brand and your culture in a little A5 printed booklet that they can keep in their vans, keep at home, know where it is when they need it. In other situations, you may use your drives, your online systems, however you normally would save documents whilst you're working. That's one way of doing it. My only concern with that is that it effectively gets buried in an online filing cabinet, a bit like the days where we used to kind of put things actually in a filing cabinet and forget about them. So that one I'm not so keen on. It does need to be something people know where it is and can reference. I'm a huge fan of company wikis. Things like Confluence, Notion provide these a great place to keep your employee handbook. And not only that, but they start to put everything in one place, which really does reinforce that this is something that is living, it's breathing, it's being updated, it's regularly being referred to. You may well then have things like your health and safety rules there, your company practices, your brand style guides, operationally how you do things, things like induction checklists. The list is endless of what you can include in company wikis. So I'm a huge fan of those, particularly if you've got people who are in desk-based jobs where they can access those really easily. And I find those a really useful tool. You can also search within them and things like that. So I find those to be really beneficial. You also need to ensure that you can demonstrate people know the rules and can access them. One way to do this is get people to sign to say that they've received their copy. Particularly if you're handing out paper copies, that can be really beneficial. Signing it as part of the employment contract to say that they will keep up to date with the employee handbook is another way of doing it. If you've got things like company wiki, then that will be something that's there, people are familiar with, and you can demonstrate that. Often there's online ways of demonstrating it. If you're using things like HR software, Breathe HR, for example, allows you to put read receipts so people can confirm that they've read a document, and you can check who's read a document. Again, that's another really good way of making sure that you've got that. But that's really beneficial if you do end up in an employment tribunal and have to prove that somebody knew the rules. Having a way of knowing that people are clearly accessing, using the document and know it's there is really beneficial to you. So that's it. In a nutshell, that's your employee handbook. There is a lot to it. There's a lot to consider, and there's a lot to really think through about how your business works on a day-to-day basis and what you need to set as your expectations, what rules you need to put in place. If writing an employee handbook all seems like too much hassle, it is time consuming to do. Let us do it for you. Details are on the screen now. Get in touch with us. Find out how we can support you with your employee handbooks and your contracts of employment.